Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm sitting in today with everybody's favorite guest, Student Engagement Director, Adrienne Thoman. Adrienne, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I love that awesome introduction.
Did we get your title right this time?
Yes,
perfect.
perfect.
Every single because we're still up in the air whether it is Student Engagement Director or Director of Student Engagement. I know it's just two letters that really make a difference, but what is your official title?
Director of Student Engagement.
So it's not Student Engagement Director, but Director of Student Engagement. Because I've heard people say it both ways. I just got to...
what? It's tomato. I'm okay with either.
I just want to make sure that I'm getting people's titles right on the show. I mean, I have to be respectful of you. All right, well, we are certainly looking forward to talking about a lot of different events coming up in May. Today's podcast, we're also being joined by Nightly News Vice President Dylan Kleintop. Dylan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back on the show.
Of course, and before we get started, I wanted to put a quick thank you out there to Dylan. Dylan has been working diligently with the Knights men's baseball. In fact, just recently, last week, we had 2 sets of doubleheaders, and I got to tell you that he's been doing a wonderful job. We're going to end up, fingers crossed, total broadcasting all of the home games this year, which was our goal, and we hope to expand that next year to either more home games or maybe some convenient road games. So maybe one of these days after Dylan's moved on, maybe he can come back and as an alumni and join our broadcast again. But really having a good time this year. Knights are playing well. Got to have a chance to watch Quentin Heckard 7 innings, complete game shutout with 13 strikeouts last week. It was pretty incredible what we got to see. So what were your impressions from getting to do the baseball?
I think it's a great experience. I mean, just going out to the games and watching them. I mean, the first game, coldest game I've ever been to. I couldn't feel my hands, but it's complete opposite of what last game was. And honestly, I think the highlight of the season was Keese when he hit his first career hit yesterday, and everyone was
so proud of him.
Everyone was going crazy at the game. It was a good moment for everybody.
Talking about Marquise Broxton on Senior Recognition Day, getting his first base hit. So
and his first run too.
Well, that was it's certainly something that was really cool that we were able to see. But really, just happy that we're able to support the team. Love all the guys. They're really busting their butts this year. Some of the games were canceled in early season. It's just so tough when they're scheduling games in May. But we also want to thank all the fans, and Adrienne, want to thank you for bringing students out to the game yesterday. It is a little bit of a hike down there to in the net, but really, really nice fields. Great place to watch a game, and we're just so happy that we've been able to do that. All thanks to Dylan and Tyler Coleman as well, working on covering these stories for the Nightly News. Great turnaround. You're doing great at getting me those stories. Andrew Day has taken some amazing photos, so we hope to share those with not only the school, but the baseball team as well, so they can have some nice pictures of their college days. They're going to look back on this, and they're going to love the fact that they have those pictures. So, all right, well, we're going to move on to talk about May. There's a lot of big things coming up in May, Adrienne, and the most important for some, not for all, but for some, we want to talk about something coming up this Thursday night, May 2nd. It's the Commencement Eve Social. So, Adrienne, can you share a little bit more? I've never had the opportunity to go to the Commencement Eve.
Well, you need
social.
to come. It's amazing.
Well, I have class during that time, so I unfortunately will not be able to make it. But so we have to make sure that we educate our students about, for those who are graduating, what Commencement Eve Social is.
So we really wanted to create an event, and I say we, meaning the engagement office as well as the Alumni Association and the foundation office. We wanted to create an event that allowed students to really celebrate their commencement, kind of a little bit more formal, get dressed up a little bit, and that is Commencement Eve. So we have students come. We have a champagne toast that's delivered by our president. Curtis Volker typically gives a toast as well on behalf of the Alumni Association. We have a photo booth and heavy hors d'oeuvres and just an amazing Mark Huntsberger and his band are there performing. It's a really, really nice night, and I think it's the caliber of what commencement should be.
When is that?
It is May 2nd from 6 to 8 in the Conference Center.
Fantastic. So is there any type of sign up that's needed or just for graduating students? And where can they find the link for that Commencement Eve social if they haven't already signed up?
They can check their Student Central, so the email that they get from the campus, or they could just email me at adriennethoman@centralpenn.edu.
Basically anything that we talk about here on this podcast, if you have any questions, concerns, I try to put your information, but I also try to put links to other information as well. But you can always reach out to Adrienne Thoman at centralpenn.edu. All right, Adrienne, something else I wanted to talk about is something that I know is near and dear to your heart, something that you're very, very active in creating. You're already brainstorming this, and we still are a couple of weeks out when we record this podcast from it, but it is the Green Team Lawn Party. That's going to take place Wednesday, May 8th from 2 to 5 on the Quad. So, Adrienne, let's talk a little bit more about what this lawn party sets out to do and some of the features from the lawn party.
This is the Green Team. Did you know we have a Central Penn College Green Team? We do.
That's fantastic. Tell me more.
So the committee is really designed to support and encourage any kind of sustainability initiatives that happen here on campus. And our signature event is the Green Team Lawn Party, because what better way to celebrate our world, our earth, than getting outside and enjoying a day in the sun. So we have a lot of fun. We do yard games. We make veggie kebabs on the grill. We have Recycle Pong, which is basically, I don't want to say it's like beer pong because we don't use beer, but we have recyclable containers that we use as the cups on the table when we play with the ping pong balls. And we do a tie-dye. Every year we have a signature white t-shirt that we have our students tie-dye while they're there. And, which is another really cool thing, our facilities office, they build, thank you Rob and team for doing this for us every year, they build basically a brick wall for us, like a graffiti wall, and then we tag it with spray paint with some kind of art, Earth Day design that they can use, and it's displayed in our student fellowship area. So we have 2 already, and this will be our 3rd installment in the series. And we haven't quite finalized the design yet, but they're always very unique and celebrate the earth. And
now, obviously, you are one of the main cogs, if you will, of the Green Team. Can you tell us some of the other initiatives that the Green Team's participated in, and maybe where the idea of this lawn party came from initially?
So it was just Earth Day. So the latest thing that we just did was our Earth Day pledge table, where we had information about recycling on campus. So for students that may not be aware about the residential recycling that we have, or even any of our students that aren't aware of the recycling opportunities that we have on campus, we educated them on that. And we had a really cool, Megan Peterson made this amazing tree, and Caitlin Copas had the leaves that went with it, that they wrote their pledge, what one thing they could do this coming year to help to save the earth. So whether it's turning the water off while they're brushing their teeth, or making that commitment to recycle, or maybe not printing as much in the computer lab, whatever it may be, they were able to write their pledge on there. I think the funniest one was one of the students said they were going to shower less.
How about a more brief shower as opposed to less frequency? Well, we still need the frequency to be there, but maybe the length of time. I'm usually in and out in like 10 minutes. So I know it's, I mean, that's me, but obviously I understand. With my wife, I always ask her about it, and she's got very long hair, so that she contends that because I don't have hair or very infrequently have hair, I'm able to get in and out faster. So, but yeah, so that's one thing I always try to do. And as you know, Adrienne, I'm a big fan of, the whole idea of reduce, reuse, recycle is really what I believe myself. I think a lot of times some of these campaigns that stress recycling don't necessarily stress the reduction part of it. Yes, if we're getting a water bottle, should we recycle? Of course. But at the same time, maybe stop buying water bottles in the first place and use other means of, getting water. And I know it probably kills you when you go to the store and buy a case of water for events that we have on campus, because again, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, the documentary on Netflix called Tapped, you guys, as the Green Team, did a screening of that last year now, I believe, and it changed my mind as Dylan's drinking out of a plastic bottle currently.
Look at that guilty face he has right now.
It changed.
Thirsty.
Well, see, here's the thing, though. What's interesting about all of this is it's not really our fault. The way that our country has shifted over the past 30 years and the busyness epidemic that exists, it doesn't allow us to have the means to do these things. I mean, right now, I'm sitting here and I've got bottles of water in the fridge and I wish I didn't, but that's just the most convenient way. It's not like I have access to water up here. Sure, could I run down the stairs and fill up a mug of water for a guest? Sure, but a lot of times when I'm down here, I don't have that opportunity. I don't have that kind of time. So it's just more easy and convenient. Unfortunately, we don't need to go into all of the issues with plastic, but honestly, like for you can't just carry around a big, orange jug like you'd see on the sideline of a football game to these places you go.
I'd still have to buy disposable cups.
Right. So, I mean, it's unfortunate that we live in a society that really condones a throwaway culture that we live in. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's unfortunate, and I wish that there was more individually we could do, but I do appreciate so much what you and the green team have done, and I certainly look forward to the lawn party. So really, is this just a show up kind of thing?
Just show up, no registration needed, come in and enjoy the day.
Free food.
And he didn't mention it, but Professor Miller is also a card-carrying member of the green team.
I just wish so bad I could join you more often for your meetings. So I'm going to make a promise to you that I'm going to do everything I can to make the meetings from now on, because at least one this term, because it is something that's very important to me. And we also are in the process of working on our project for the research exhibition that's I wouldn't say loosely affiliated. It's very affiliated with recycling here on campus. So our goal is to try to get each residential student to take this survey so we can get a larger perspective of what our students think, and hope we can make some changes here, even if they're small. And that's really what it is. Even small changes are helpful. So, well, Adrienne, it's come to that time of the show for Adrienne's featured 3 events.
Oh, and we have big events this month.
For the month of May.
My featured 3.
Well, let's hear what number 1 entails. What is event number 1 for May, Adrienne?
Okay, it is my favorite. Well, I have a lot of favorite days on campus, but Petapalooza. There are puppies and kittens and bunnies, and I think there were lizards, like all kinds of pets on campus.
The rest of them cuddly, lizards not so much.
Well, I wasn't snuggling the lizard, but
Gotcha.
the puppies, oh my goodness. They're so, like, every time I see a pug in a little, like, stroller, it just melts my heart. I can't help it. It's the happiest day on campus. They literally, it's an amazing event that actually raises awareness and helps to support our local pet shelters. They are literally everywhere on campus, everywhere, and it's a blast.
Dylan, what's your feeling on pets? Have you ever had pets, or what?
Oh yeah, I'm a dog guy.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I had a dog. He was a golden retriever. He passed away when I was in 6th grade. He was 14. But now I have a dog. She's a Spaniel Lab mix. She's all black with a nice white stripe down her chest. She's 6. Her name's Kaya. I'm not a fan of cats. I would choose dogs over any kind of animal any day. I'm a dog guy, for sure.
I've always been a dog guy growing up. I had a black lab and a yellow lab growing up, and then when I was a little older, my parents had a beagle, and unfortunately that beagle kind of turned me off to animals altogether.
Oh, no.
And I love the dog, and I'm God rest her soul, but constantly she would sit at the table and just bark at us while we were eating. It got to the point where I stopped eating with my family, which I'm sure they didn't really care for, but and honestly, I've never had a pet ever since.
No.
It also is not where we live. We don't really have the ability to have pets. I mean, we own our home, so I guess technically we could, but a lot of times we're not home on the weekends, and it's just unfortunately never worked out. I like other people's dogs. One of my really good friends had a black lab, and I loved her to death. And every time I went over, I enjoyed her. But it's just almost like when people talk about kids. Liking other people's kids is fine. You know what I mean?
Like to give them back.
Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of the same way I feel. So what is unique, I thought about this as I look, I also noticed that same day is the family flick series A Dog's Way Home.
I know. It's going to be a whole pet themed day.
Did you do that specifically because of
Heck
Petapalooza?
yeah.
That's awesome. So Petapalooza will take place on May 18th. That's Saturday from 11 to 3. But come early, so at 2 o'clock you can make your way down to the Capitol Blue Cross Theater and check out A Dog's Way Home from 2 to 4. Okay, part 2. Adrienne's featured 3 event number 2 is...
May 21st, the Activities and Athletics Banquet. This is an annual event where we come together to celebrate all of the amazing things that our teams and our student clubs have been doing. And it's a fun, celebratory kind of night. We have a dinner buffet, and then we have a series of fun awards that we give to recognize all the great stuff that's happening.
You know, what's different from this year in terms of nightly news? I mean, this is our podcast, so I would like to bring this up. Over the last few years, we've won some awards, and I can't thank you and everybody who nominated us, because this is a nominating type of thing. But where's a little different for us this year, and I'd love to get Dylan's feedback on this because he was involved so much, is we've actually, for the first time, have had a significant connection with the athletics teams. From calling a soccer match, which we do plan on doing some more of that, to broadcasting 6 or 7 basketball games, 6 or 7 baseball games. I mean, just the interaction that the nightly news has had with our athletics this year has really been something special for us, and it's really allowed us to bond with them, certainly in a different way. So I hope that, Dylan, when you look back at your time here, this last year for you, the opportunity to work with sports, even though, I'm sure if, the Phillies called you up and offered you a job, you'd take it, but, you may not end up working in sports. This might be the only opportunity that you ever really have. What does this last year mean to you that you've had this opportunity to work with the athletics department?
This last year has been fun. First, it started out playing soccer as my last season. That was just a great time to be with the guys for the last ride. Then we commentated on a soccer game, which I've never actually commentated on a soccer game before. So that was cool for me because it's the sport that I love to do, and just being there, and my girlfriend played, so that was pretty cool too.
That's the thing I'm afraid of, Dylan, is that when you leave, who's going to call these games? Because I've never even played soccer.
I might be around. We'll see.
Well, I might have to hold you to that.
And then calling the basketball games. I mean, I didn't get to actually call the basketball game, but just being on the camera.
And you did an amazing job of it too, by the way.
It makes you realize how difficult these camera guys actually have it. They make it look so good, they don't mess up at all. There's no lagging, whereas that was tough when they would go back and forth real fast. And then the last 5 seconds was always stressful because you never knew it was going to happen. Then baseball, just writing the stories, being around the guys. I'm not necessarily tied to just sitting at the table. If I want, I can just go talk to the guys and get some
part of your job.
Get some feedback from them, how they think the game's going. So I'm kind of a reporter in the game. Well,
we appreciate your efforts there. And Adrienne, I'd love to chat with you about maybe the nightly news potentially having an award for maybe an athlete or something like that we would like to recognize from our interactions with them.
I love that idea.
So let's we can chat about that after we're done here. But the reason that we're talking about this is for the May 21st Activities and Athletics Banquet. Can you talk to us just quickly about who is welcome to come, how they would go about determining that, and how they can sign up?
So first of all, it's open to all of our club advisors, our club members, club officers and members, as well as our coaches and any of our players. We also have an open invitation to any of our Central Penn faculty and staff that would want to come in support of our students.
So that's something that, so certainly if you're in a club, certainly talk with your club advisor as well. And so also anybody who is an athlete as well is welcome. So if anybody out there would like to maybe be a part of this, please just contact Adrienne or your club advisor for more information. All right, the last thing on Adrienne's featured 3 for the month of May is
another big annual event that happens in May, our Festival of Nations, which is happening May 22nd from 4 to 7. I'm anticipating that'll be an outdoor event, but the plans are still being finalized for that. Typically, we have some really cool cultural performers come in.
Did we get rained out last year? Is that why it was inside?
We ended up in the conference center.
Which was fine. Everything was great. But obviously, in the middle of May, you would love it to be outside. Yeah. And it's often such a easier to bond outside. So Festival of Nations was just fantastic last year. We really enjoyed the opportunity, and we're going to be there taking photos this year. So we will be excited to do the Festival of Nations. That's going to take place on May 22nd from 4 to 7 p.m. And we're still trying to check on the location, but we will promise we will share that with you on the Nightly News.
Megan Peterson's taking the lead this year on planning this big event.
So that takes a little bit off of your plate, right?
I'm excited. She's amazing. So
and shout out to her in terms of the Sexual Assault Awareness Week as well. She did a fantastic job with that.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Adrienne, that's going to do it for another episode of the Nightly News Podcast. We are always such a pleasure to join you. So I just want to give you a quick rundown, everybody. All right, we're going to start off with May 2nd. The Commencement Eve Social will take place in the Conference Center from 6 to 8. The second event is the Green Team Lawn Party on Wednesday, May the 8th from 2 to 5 on the Quad. Adrienne's featured 3 event number 1 is Petapalooza. That's going to take place on May 18th from 11 to 3. You can also hang around for Family Flick A Dog's Way Home from 2 to 4 on that same afternoon. The second event in Adrienne's featured 3 is the Activities and Athletics Banquet. That's going to take place on May 21st from 5 to 6:30. Check in with Adrienne or your club advisor or coach about attendance. Final event for Adrienne's featured 3 is on May 22nd is the Festival of Nations from 4 to 7. We're still checking out on the venue, but we are looking forward to hopefully having it outside. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
All right. And Dylan, I want to thank you very much for being here today. I always appreciate when you're here, and I'm going to miss you when you leave, that's for sure.
I definitely will miss this place a lot, actually.
Well, we hope to keep you close, so we hope to keep you even involved as an alumni. And, of course, everyone's favorite guest, Student Engagement Director, Adrienne Thoman. Adrienne, before we get you out of here, how's your Pirate Life podcast going?
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, thank you for all the help that you have given us, kind of coaching us and mentoring us. We are having a blast. So much fun. I'm having,
I got to tell you, I enjoyed as well. So check out the Pirate Life podcast on Facebook for Adrienne's podcast, in which I help produce. But otherwise, has always been a pleasure, Adrienne.
Thanks for having me. As always, I love it.
All right. So that's going to do it for another Nightly News podcast for Nightly News Vice President Dylan Kleintop and Student Engagement Director Adrienne Thoman. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we will catch you next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
I'm Dr. Melissa Whaler, Dean of Humanities and Sciences, and you are listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
And welcome back to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I know everyone has tuned in today for the exciting conclusion of our interview with the Vice President of Academic Affairs and Provost, Dr. Eric Zeglen. Dr. Zeglen, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Thank you.
Well, in the first episode, we talked a little bit more about your history, your background, and how you ended up coming to Central Penn College. Wonderful example. We have a lot in common. You went through the program that I'm, going to be starting here in the late summer. So we had some great conversations about that. So you can always go back and check that out. That was the last episode. But this episode, I really have just a few questions in terms of where we are right now at Central Penn College, some of the important new initiatives that are going on, some of the important initiatives that you're leading that we can talk about. And again, in many circumstances, we're going to have to sort of talk about these in general terms. A lot of these things, the ink hasn't dried on some of the discussions we might have today, but just kind of a look at what Central Penn's going to be looking like over the next 5 to 10 years. The first thing, and probably the most major news that has come from our institution over the past 3 months is our free housing initiative that begins in the summer of 2019. Basically, on-campus students can live for free their first year. There are some stipulations in terms of credit load and in terms of staying out of disciplinary issues and that type of thing. But to be honest, Dr. Zeglen, this is one of the most revolutionary things that I've ever heard come out of Central Penn College, certainly in my time here. Where did this come from? What do you think the impact that it might have on our students, and how might this impact Central Penn College as a whole?
Affordability in higher education across the country is a major, major issue. I mean, we're not so much in the last couple of weeks. A lot of politics have pretty much dominated the news cycles. But, outside of the political aspects of the news cycle, a lot of what you hear about is student debt and how it's increasing, and it's becoming an issue across higher ed in general, across the country. And so every college and university has a responsibility to operate as efficiently as they can, and in order to provide the best value. It may not be the least expensive, it may not be the most expensive, but the best value for the students. And when we took a look at what we can do and what we could do quickly here at Central Penn, we were positioned with the excess capacity that's for our residence halls, for the suites and for the apartments. We were well positioned, maybe different than other college and universities, where we could offer free housing and with, again, those stipulations that you mentioned, a minimum of credit load, if unless you have approval otherwise, 2.0 GPA, no disciplinary issues, etc. And it helps. Every little bit helps. You can get financial aid to cover a lot of your costs, but sometimes financial aid doesn't cover all your costs. And by reducing the housing costs, and by the way, the students will still pay for the utilities and they'll still pay for their food, but the actual housing cost will be reduced to zero. When we did that, it makes college more affordable for our students, and plus us doing our little part to help this national issue we have with college debt.
What's very interesting to me, and I'm sure you're kind of in the same boat, the biggest check I write out every month is for my student loans. And it's let me just say that check's not going to get any smaller by me continuing on to school. That being said, in a general sense, I think that students really miss some major opportunities. By this, I mean, so one of the things that I'm very, very proud to do here at the college is I'm on the Central Penn College Education Foundation Scholarship Selection Committee. And what blows my mind, even in a good term, we only have about 150 students that even apply. And that really bothers me to a certain... I'm to the point now where I make my students do it, even if nothing else, just to get into the habit of doing it. But I guess another thing that interests me is there are hundreds, thousands of scholarships out there, especially for undergraduates, from all different ages, from all different backgrounds. So many students don't take advantage of opportunities that are there. So I guess in a certain respect, I hate to say this, but a lot of the debt that's incurred by students are simply because they're not maybe reaching out to certain avenues that are available. I've even spoken to people just recently. I had an intern that was working in City Hall, and they had a scholarship available to everybody in the state and did not get one person to even apply for it. So basically, if one person would have applied, they would have won it. And so this is a major, major step for Central Penn College to have an initiative like this. I guess I just hope that now that this is such in the public agenda, that students maybe take more control over how they're going to pay for it. I remember myself, and you're probably in the same boat. We went to school, we signed a piece of paper, we got to go to school, didn't even have to worry about our loans until later. I think that hopefully, maybe even as an institution, we have to help educate our students about these opportunities. But this is absolutely one of the most... When I heard this, I was actually taken aback because I thought to myself, wow, this is something that's a difference maker for what we are doing here. And I really do think it's going to have a major and profound impact on not only enrollment, but also the amount of debt that these students are incurring to come to Central Penn College. So I really appreciate your honesty about that, and I certainly hope our students take advantage of this initiative. So it does start in summer. If you are coming in fall as well, you would still be eligible, but it would be for 3 terms as opposed to 4. So we no insight necessarily on whether this is going to be something long term, but if it's successful, maybe it will be. Well, another thing that I wanted to ask you, in a recent town hall with the faculty and staff, you had talked a lot about some of the things that you'd been working on early in your time here. And one of the most important things that you mentioned in that presentation was data-driven solutions. What does that mean when you're talking about maybe changing the way that this office functions? When you say using data-driven solutions, what does that really mean, and how are you using those data-driven solutions to make changes here? Sure.
So, if you listen to my earlier podcast, I had, mentioned that I'm a very analytical, very logical, and that's how I approach any issue, any problem, any opportunity. And we need to use data to inform our decisions. So it's not the driving force behind decisions that we make, but too many times people will assert a particular opinion or a particular option, and they're very passionate about it. But you don't know if is it a decision or is it an opinion based on research and data, or is this just something that's coming from their gut? So a lot of times, either when I am trying to advocate for a particular point of view or a particular position, before I do that, I try to go back out and say, what does the research say? What does the data say? Try to form my opinion, and sometimes my opinion changes based on the information that I have. And I hold that same standard to everybody else that I interact with as well. And you might find me often saying, well, where's your evidence? Where's your proof? Let me see the data that is backing up that assertion. And because there's a difference if, say, we did a student survey and the students want X. And you can march forward and say, that's a great idea, let's go, only to come to find out that maybe 1% of the respondents in that survey actually wanted that. So it's not going to impact a lot of people. So that's what you have to weigh in when you're trying to make any decision as to what's the impact going to be. In my case, how many students will it affect, or how many faculty will it affect? Is it positive? Is it negative? Etc. And all that has to be brought into the fold and understood before you can make an informed decision using all that data.
Can you give me an example of a situation where, even in your short time here, that happened?
Sure. Well, you can use the housing initiative. I didn't personally crunch all the data. Another group here on campus did. And when we talked about it in cabinet about a free housing initiative, could we offer it? It was, could we afford it? And if we could afford it, where was kind of the break-even point? Where was it going to be financially viable for the college? And we used that data and said, okay, not only that, but are the finances, is that an issue for our students? And yes, you could say in general, across higher ed, across the country, it's an issue. But at what point is it for Central Penn students? So at what point, can they what extra money do they need beyond what financial aid can provide? What are they contributing? How many students contribute, beyond what maybe financial aid can apply? And will free housing make a difference? To use extreme examples, let's say, free housing at Central Penn is going to have a different impact than free housing at Penn State or Harvard or Yale. So they're going to have different impacts at different places. And that's what we had to analyze. We had to take the information that we have on our students, on what resources we have here at the college, and then let that information, let that evidence, let that data help us inform our decision, in this case, to offer free housing.
Well, again, I think that is revolutionary in so many ways. I know that we're the first school in this area to try to do that, and we are uniquely have the opportunity to do this because of certain Central Penn things, whether it's the fact that we own the buildings. There's a lot of different reasons why we are able to do this that certainly, frankly, other colleges just can't replicate because of scale, for one, and some other things that are unique to Central Penn. So I think everyone is on board with this. I think everyone is looking forward to it because online and evening students are the lifeblood, and they're the majority of the students we have here. Our daytime population's only about a third, and our on-ground residential population's less. However, one of the ways that, in my personal opinion, that you can see a major difference of a college and the things that we're doing and the volunteering in the community and developing things like the SGA and the things that they're doing, it really helps to have people here. and I think that it could have a domino effect into our evening programs and into our online programs with more people here on campus. So I certainly hope that this is a major boon for our enrollment, and hope we get a nice crew of new students here in the summer and fall.
We do too.
Well, I'm just going to switch gears a little bit because this might be a little bit more in your wheelhouse. You talk about cost, and cost for higher education is not simply living. It's not simply tuition, but it's also what are these other things that are involved, whether it be a computer or textbooks. Obviously, a trend in higher education that actually the Nightly News has reported on over the last few years is the increase in open educational resources, also known as OER. What is your opinion on open educational resources?
It's funny, just a little anecdote here. So you're going to learn this. When you take your doctoral classes, you will have at least one presentation to give in every single class you do. So when I was in my program, I was taking 3 classes. I was full-time. And I was typically giving anywhere from 3 to, let's say, 5 presentations a weekend. And it was to the same, my cohort. It was to the same, different professors, but the same cohort. And I had, at that point in time, I had known that my dissertation, my area of research was going to be in OERs. And every single presentation I did had some type of focus on OERs. I got to the point where my cohort members were just tired of listening to me hearing about OERs. And if they would listen to this podcast, they would probably be laughing because they just know how I would just drone on and on in these presentations about the use of OERs in higher ed. Turned out my dissertation wasn't on OERs. My chair of my dissertation committee wanted me to go in a different direction. That's fine, but that's a story for another time. But so OERs have the one thing I've learned through this research is they do have their place in higher ed. The one thing that they're not is they're not a total replacement. And also, it puts a lot more work on faculty to find these OERs. And because an OER can be a chapter out of a book, it can be a 5-page PDF of an article. It can be a 2-minute video on the Brazilian tree frog. It can be, you pick any, it can be really anything. What's difficult for faculty is to find all these OERs and then take them and assemble them in a way that will achieve the student learning outcomes for that particular course. It's a very difficult thing to do. Now, and I'm using OERs differently than resources that you would purchase from a publisher that do have some cohesiveness to this. These are true OERs that are out there for individuals to use. They can be used. I've seen them. I've used them where they can be extremely effective. And they're very cost effective for the students, and they should be in no cost at all. But what you're doing is you're taking the work that, let's say, a publisher did by putting together a textbook, where a faculty member can pick that textbook up and design their class using that textbook as a resource. What you're basically doing then is shifting that work to the faculty member, saying, okay, you're going to have to go out, you're going to have to assemble enough OERs to provide enough content in your course in order for you to achieve the learning objectives for that particular course. I think they're great. There are entire states that have implemented OERs for K through 12 and higher ed. The Florida Orange Grove Project was a state-sponsored program where any K through 12 or higher ed institution in the state of Florida can go onto this OER repository and search, find, and use resources in an educational setting. Wisconsin has done something that are similar. Tennessee, Kentucky, they've all done similar statewide initiatives of forming these OER-type repositories.
One of the goals, since I've been brought on as the program coordinator in COM, is for us to get our book costs under control. So, number one, there have been certain classes that the book has been taken off the required list. It's on a recommended list, but it's not something that we're actively saying this is the textbook, do this assignment out of this book. There's still, to me, I don't know that we're to the point where OERs can totally, and to your point, take over. But I do think in certain occasions, certainly in our lower level, 100 level survey type courses, we've really gone away from texts and gone to some more of these OERs. Now, depending on some of the upper level courses, again, it might be kind of difficult, but what are, and maybe with your expertise in this, maybe what are the publishers doing to respond to this? Because the bottom line is, if they continue on their current business model, they're going to be out of business, because states and universities, colleges like ourselves are just going to do away with the textbook altogether and use OERs. How you would think that these publishers would shift and to try to make things more affordable for students so they're still viable as, a part of the educational process.
Yeah, so an initiative that publishers have been doing, they've been doing this for years, and I worked quite a bit with publishers in my role at the State Center for Higher Education, is the bottom line to the student is still an expense because you're buying publisher content. But what they're starting to do is market learning objects. You obviously pay for them, so they're not OERs. You still have to pay for these objects. But they're separating. So instead of buying a book, let's say, with 10 chapters in a book, you can buy one chapter, and you could assemble that. So you can buy components and assemble those resources, these learning objects. You could assemble these learning objects into a cohesiveness, and then present that in your class to achieve your learning objectives for the class. So that's different. Those learning objects are different. So all OERs are learning objects. Not all learning objects are OERs. And so that publishers are starting to offer more in terms of learning objects where there is a cost to them, but they're still trying to. And obviously these are corporations. Their job is to make increase shareholder wealth and to make money. They're still going to charge for these, but the one thing that what is occurring is it's increasing the educational experience. So I know my past experience, and other professors may have seen this as well. If you have a book that, let's say, has 10 chapters in it, there might be one chapter where you don't use or is not really that relevant. So what you can do is then present learning objects in a way that is structured to actually target the learning objectives for your class. So while it may not be much cheaper than a textbook, hopefully it is, but while it may not, using learning objects in a class can actually make the class a little more efficient in tailoring the content towards your learning objects, instead of having maybe some of this periphery stuff that is in a textbook that's not really relevant to the class. Obviously, learning objects, as I said earlier, might be a little more difficult to find the OERs.
It's a little bit behind the curtain a little bit, but one of the biggest issues that I personally have as an instructor is my ability to get in touch with my textbook reps. I would be fascinated by something like this, but here I'm a person that's making decisions on textbooks for my courses, and I never even knew that this was even an option. Why in the world would these individuals not have a better and more clear? You would think that they would be here all the time talking to us about these options. Why? And even when I was at other institutions, didn't know who our textbook reps were over there. What are these textbook reps doing? Why are they not, at school talking to us? Because honestly, that right there alone, that's an interesting alternative that I didn't even know existed.
Well, too, and a lot of, and it's still kind of new, relatively new in the way content is delivered. So publishers are also trying to make sure they have a business model which, has a positive impact on their bottom line fiscally. So they're still trying to figure out, okay, if they're not buying the book, then they're going to be buying these learning objects. How can we structure that so that all of a sudden we're not taking this huge hit on profits? So that's one aspect. And they're corporations; they're in business to increase shareholder wealth. So I don't begrudge them of that. But so it's easier and it's more traditional to go the book route. And so I think that as time goes on, as publishers get more mature with how they deliver the content, become just a little more adaptable in using learning objects, because as I said earlier, it's a lot more work to structure that course. I think you're going to see a lot more of this, and I think you're going to start to see that transition. And it's going to be a slow transition of using less books and more learning objects. I don't foresee a time where we're ever going to do away with books, but you might achieve some type of an equilibrium there where learning objects are used just as effectively as textbooks are today.
Very interesting topic. This is actually a very interesting topic. One of our students who has since graduated actually covered this for the Nightly News, and we covered this. So another interesting, and I didn't even know you had that kind of background with OERs. So I'm glad I asked that question.
I did a ton of research for my doctoral program in that.
My goal for my students is to make sure that, if nothing else, the books that we're providing are affordable. There are books, as I'm sure you know, anywhere from $100 to $300. I mean, it's really quite insane. So we are, as an institution, really taking that into consideration. Well, speaking of taking things into consideration, I want to take your time into consideration, and we're going to call it a podcast for today. But Dr. Zeglen, frankly, it's been my honor to get to know you a little bit better, and I certainly appreciate all of your hard work and some of the initiatives that you're in charge of. Some maybe that we can talk about once the ink dries, if you will, on a future podcast. But we'd absolutely love to have you back sometime in the near future.
That'd be great.
All right. Well, Dr. Zeglen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. So for Dr. Eric Zeglen, our Vice President of Academic Affairs and Provost, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll catch you next time on the Nightly News Podcast.